Uh, Namaskar, myself Hariom Tyagi, and you are watching Observer Dawn. Today we will discuss CFO budget expectations. Before beginning dialogues, let's welcome our guests. First of all, I would like to welcome Mr. Nikhil Dujari, CFO GMR Energy. Nikhil is a graduate in commerce and done his CA and CWA. He has a rich experience over 24 years. He was the CFO of Everest Industry Limited for more than 4 decades before moving as the CFO of GMR Energy recently. He has also been associated with MIT University to review the curriculum for select course and was also the head of the Economic Affairs and Tax Committee of CII for MP State. During his past experience, he has been regular speaker at UBS firm, India CFO firm, IMT Ghaziabad, etc. Mr. Nikhil Dujari, good afternoon,
Good
and
afternoon.
you're most welcome in our program.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Okay. I would like to welcome Mr. Sandeep Aggarwal. Mr. Sandeep Aggarwal, Chief Finance Officer, Insecticide India Limited, hold key responsibility for managing the company's financial risk and is also responsible for financial planning and record keeping financial reporting to the higher management. He joined IIL in 1995 as a consultant and then long journey continues. He took over as a chief finance officer of IIL in 2009 and he's successfully taken the company to new heights. Good afternoon, Mr. Sandeep Aggarwal ji.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Rajeev Aggarwal, CFO Rama Steel Tubes Limited. Mr. Rajeev is working as a CFO with Rama Steel for the last 4 years. His key responsibilities in the organization are tracking cash flow and financial planning and analyzing the company financials strength. He has been awarded for his excellent work for the annual operation plan in Ozare Power India Limited 2017-18. Rajeev ji, namaskar.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good after. Now, as the countdown for the union budget is begun, and everybody have the much expectation from the government and in budget. So let us start our this discussion. First of all, I would like to ask the question, Mr. Nikhil Dujari. Nikhilji, first of all, we would like to know what kind of the problem facing energy industry in current scenario.
So, there are a variety of problems that the energy sector as a whole is facing in the current scenario. So the largest issue that we have is that our input, which is coal, is subjected to an advance payment mechanism by the government or the government companies, which is Coal India Limited or subsidiaries of Coal India Limited. So we're always required to pay for our coal either in advance or through a letter of credit, which also is a limited period. However, when it comes to receipt of our monies from the discoms are all having their issues on liquidity and therefore they tend to get delayed. There are also issues in relation to settlement of certain claims relating to price escalations, etc., and adjustments in relation to calorific value of coal that we face. As a result, what happens is our input actually comes in on cash while our output comes on credit terms. While theoretically there are power purchase agreements, the credit terms are defined, but they are all constrained by the ability of the discoms to pay on time and also the ability of the discoms to settle. the price escalation claims in relation to coal, in relation to changes in laws, etc., on a time to time basis. So, that is the first issue that we face. The second issue that we face is typically we have been through a bad patch in terms of the prices that prevailed on the exchanges during the year 2020. 21 has been much better for us because exchange prices during the period from September to November 21 have been much higher than what we could anticipate. But so also was the case for the auctioned amount of coal. So whatever is the untied capacity of the power plants, that of course could be utilized better because of improved prices on the exchange. However, we also had to pay for coal through our nose because of rise in the auction prices of coal. The third aspect in terms of a challenge for the industry is the environmental laws. So, for example, the flue gas desulfurization plants, etc., have been made mandatory for the power plants with effect from 2024. Now, when this law came, simultaneous compensation from the discoms and the government utilities in respect of additional cost in the formulas for calculation of the cost of power have not been notified. So again, there are delays, and then there are issues in relation to usage of equipment because equipment could be Chinese, could be Indian, or could be European, and costs vary significantly. But we are actually terribly in a state of flux as to whether we should today in scenario like this look at Chinese equipment or we should look at certain spare parts coming from certain geographies the world, which could potentially pose a problem for us. There are other challenges in relation to the calorific value of coal that gets contracted between Coal India and their subsidiaries versus what we actually get. Theoretically, we get a price adjustment in respect of the calorific value of coal. However, what also happens is that the GST in relation to this is not passed on by Coal India as also the royalty in relation to this. So effectively, about 25% of our total value is lost in the credit note because of the calorific value. So that's yet another challenge that we face as the industry. I can go on and on, but I think considering the time, I will stop here on the power sector. There are others in relation to the installation of solar power, clean power, hydropower. So for solar power, if you look at the urban landscape, the cost of land is too expensive. The orientation of your rooftops could not have been designed well enough in line with the orientation of the sun to be able to take the optimum capacity. Those are challenges that we face, and I'm sure there will be guidelines in relation to design of buildings that we will see in times to be able to design rooftops to see the orientation towards the sun. The other aspects that we face on hydro, etc., also a lot of environmental clearances, project delays, issues with the relation, contractors, the villagers, their crop, and all those things. I can continue and
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, Dujari ji. Sandeep Aggarwal ji, do you have any kind of the problem in insecticide industry? Kindly unmute yourself.
Sorry. Practically, if you say, generally we don't face much problem in our agrochemical industry. But yes, though our industry is basically dependent directly on the monsoon, and every time for last 3-4 years we are facing some challenges, like somewhere it is a drought situation, somewhere it is excess rainfall. So though if you'll see the average rainfall is in the vicinity of 95 to 100%, but still the last 3-4 years are not very good for the farmers because due to the uneven rainfall or unseasonal pattern of the rainfalls during this year also. This is the basic challenge what we faced in our industry. As such, from the government point of view or from any uh, other perspective, we don't face much challenge, except one challenge which we face this year is the uncertainty of commodity prices from China. and some challenges were there in transportation and container procurement for export segment. Otherwise, rest there is no problem as such.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Rajeev ji, do you think there any problem in steel industry or it is going very well?
Sir, steel industry is going very well. There is as such there is no issue. But as far as government project is concerned, because steel industry is basically the second steel producer. Basically, we are the secondary steel producer, and we are basically dependent on the steel inputs, and which are manufactured by the primary steel producers. And there are basically the large four steel producer in India, like SAIL, JSW, ArcelorMittal, and Tata. So there are four large steel primary steel producer in India. So basically, we are dependent on the primary steel producer. So we always face the problem for the input material. That is the raw material that is called as a coils. We basically procure the coils from steel producers. We always face the problems, the availability of the material which is not timely we are procuring, because there is a lack of material in India. They are manufacturing less amount, as well as we are facing basically you know these these kind of material, basically the dependent on the various kind of inputs, like the coking coal, nickels, and like that, because the SS scrap and these kind of material, basically the less producing in India. And the government should think about the lower the basic custom duty on that, so that they can procure timely and they can produce the sufficient amount of raw material for the secondary steel producer. Secondly, the government project where we participate in through the tenders, there basically we got the project, and we faced a lot of problem there, like the payment which is timely not received. The payments are stuck there uh, even after a lot of follow-ups, but the material timely we deliver there. So these kind of problems we are facing there. Secondly, the government had announced production linked incentives for the various 13 sectors, and but because that is for the specialty steels, and that is not passed on to the secondary steel producers. So that kind of if incentive if pass on to the secondary steel producer, that is the very much better for the sustainability of the secondary steel producers, I hope.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. Dujari ji, what kind of the expectation has power and energy industry from the budget?
So I think few things on the power and energy industry per se. As I said, there could be a potential possibility to look at the securitization of coal dues vis-a-vis the outstandings that we have to receive from the discoms that have been pending since long to be received by us. So that would, in a long way, go to ease our crisis on the working capital, because of which sometimes we actually are not even able to pay for our coal. There are conditions that are attached to the auction and the sale of coal where we are required to pay in advance, and sometimes these advances are even bi-weekly or monthly. If we could be made on a weekly basis, so some kind of a mechanism where this is a cyclical something, where we do it on a weekly basis, so that certain LCs, etc., that we currently issue from our bankers, we can rotate them, or against a standby LC, we could continue to buy the coal. Simultaneously, currently there is a provision that if we have booked the coal, we are supposed to give a security deposit. Now, in case if we are not able to pay on the due date, then on that date the security deposit gets forfeited by Coal India. Now, these kind of provisions make it terribly uncompetitive for us because these forfeiture deposits we will never be able to recover from our customers because they did not pay us on time. So, for that reason, I think that is one aspect that we are looking forward to. The other aspect is that currently electricity is not subjected to a GST, it is subjected to an electricity duty. As a result of which, the inputs that go into production of electricity, which is the coal, which is the capital equipment, which is the services, etc., whatever GST we pay on that becomes our cost. And that GST we are suffering as a part of the cost. Now, average, if I was to take 18% GST on all the inputs, then and the government has to kind of conversely speaking put a 12% GST on electricity per se, then this is likely to be revenue neutral as far as the government goes, because the discoms, when they bill it to the end customers on meter rents, etc., they do have the ability to recover the GST. So while the end customer is paying it to the discom, in the process, we are losing that credit, which we could potentially be able to gain if electricity is subjected to GST. So I'm expecting some development on that side from the government of India. I'm also expecting that, when we are running our plants to full loads, certain power which may be surplus, we are currently selling on energy exchanges. Power as a commodity does not have the ability of being stored except in batteries. So, those batteries currently, the pricing of batteries is abnormally high, and therefore, those batteries that have the ability to store power, if there are certain items that can be kind of notified to be able to reduce the cost of the batteries in terms of lower GST rates, etc., that is going to go a long way to help the power industry to actually sustain. Any power that is wasted can never be regenerated. So it is better to be stored. So that is one more aspect. There is going to be a huge electric vehicle charging infrastructure that is going to come on board. Again, as we said, electricity is not subjected to any GST, while the charging infrastructure which requires to be developed today would be subjected to GST on the inputs, right? So, to that extent, the government would do well, just like they've exempted electric vehicles from registration and road tax charges, as also charges in relation to GST if they are waived in respect of these, or GST conversely is levied on this, so that because in any case the end customer pays for it. So that could be revenue neutral per se, but GST, if it is levied, that could help us in kind of developing the infrastructure. And government, as it is likely to continue with the boost on the infrastructure sector. There are other items like services that go into maintenance, etc., of power plants and imports that we do. A huge element of imports that we do or inputs that we use. So, if you have a coal based power plant, a huge element of that is steel, right? And steel currently is subjected to regressive import duties. This was the case when globally the steel prices were higher than in India. Now, today, when the steel prices have come down, have gone up in India, and global prices and steel prices are regressively high. So, when steel was 27 rupees a kilo about 2 years ago versus when it is 80 rupees a kilo today, then to that extent, the import duties that they have levied on steel, that should go off. And if they do that, this will also go a long way in reduction on the cost of power that we ultimately supply to the industry, and industry will get more competitive to that extent. Then there have been a fair element of lives that have been lost during the COVID pandemic. Now, probably the government will do well, and I'm sorry, I'm digressing from the question. The government will probably do well to kind of give a one time exemption to the descendants of those people who passed away during COVID, to say that if they got their full and final settlements in terms of their leave encashments and their gratuities, etc., there are currently limits. And those limits sometimes may be lower than the amount they actually got. So probably the government would do well to kind of exempt those kind of incomes for once to do. There could be another incentive that could be granted. You see, during COVID, the most impacted industries were industries like tourism, airline, hotels, taxis, all these. Each one of these industries, whether it is airline, whether it is tourism, whether it is airports, and we as GMR also are into the airport sector. But since here I'm in a personal capacity, I would not talk about it. Now, these are all industries that require to be conserved and preserved. So somewhere down the line, if there are exemptions that are one time in nature in respect of duties and taxes that go into the power that is supplied to these industries, then to that extent, this invatable something, if it is introduced as a one time something, then that will really help us. You're on mute, Dr. Tyagi. Dr. Tyagi, you are on mute.
About the insecticide industry, what kind of the demand they have?
As far as the agrochemical industry is concerned, I feel as government is already thrusting on doubling the income of the farmers. So government should think for the betterment of the infrastructure for the farmers. As there are 2-3 things which we would love if government can do, like the farmers basically dependent upon the rainfall, they dependent upon the water. As lot of water reservoir or dams are there in southern part of India, if that type of things could be done in another parts of India, that could help the farmers also, that could help the agriculture sector also. Vis-a-vis, I feel that there should be a increase or there should be a thrust on the storage facilities also, because we have seen a lot of the time that farmer has to throw their crops on the roads due to the non-availability of the storage facilities. If good storage facilities would be there, definitely it will help government to improve the income of the farmers. Then I feel that government should thrust on improving the transportation facilities for the farmers so that they can sell their crops in the mandis. They can reduce timing of their crop transportation also. Further, I feel that for agrochemical, government should make some arrangements under Make in India to help agrochemical industry to reduce their dependence on China, because a lot of raw material imports from China. So though we people are also working on the backward integration, but yes, still a lot more needs to be done. Further, I feel that government should help the industry for developing their research and development, because in agrochemical the research and development is quite low. As the government want to move toward the green chemistry, so for attracting the industry to do research in the green field, to do research in the less toxic products, so they should help industry in helping them to give some benefits for research and development, to set up some centers and like that. So further, if we would like to give the farmers some benefits, then the cost of the agrochemical should come down, and that can be done by reducing the GST. Though as on today it is 18%, and the total burden goes to the consumer, and the consumer is ultimately farmers. So I think government should think something on giving relief on GST side also. That is my expectations from this budget for the farmers and for agrochemical industry. Thank you.
Mr. Mr. Hariom Tyagi.
Rajiv ji,
Yeah.
what kind of the expectation you are from upcoming budgets?
See, lot of expectations are there. You know, this budget is just coming before, general election. in
Yeah, yeah.
five states, in especially Uttar Pradesh. And ruling government, I think, would not attempt to lose any vote bank and will try to satisfy everyone, and every class of society, every class of community. And I hope from the government, I think, will make more spending on the infra. Basically, there are a lot of projects which are going on from the government, have make more focus on the projects like Bharat Mala, Sagar Mala, and Atal Mission Yojana, smart cities. The government, spending on these projects, but I think the government have make more focus on these and increasing the spending on these projects, so that the domestic consumption and domestic demand will increase, and definitely in turn it will benefit to our industry a lot. And secondly, I would suggest to the government they should make some simplification and rationalization of the taxes, because the taxes structure are not up to the mark, because the industry everywhere, if you see, because there is a very confusion in the taxation. Like they have recently, last 6 months back, they have started TDS and TCS on the procurement, on the selling, which has created a lot of work to the industry, to the corporate, and these have to simplify and they have to rationalize the taxation part. Secondly, they have to make more focus on the ease doing of business, because ease doing of business is very critical nowadays, because COVID has created a lot of crises across the world, and they have so many people the lost the job, and employment is the main issue in the country. So government have to make the more focus on the employment part. Government has to make more spending on the education part, because in the last 2 years the students have suffered a lot, because the persons who are taking the private coaching, who are taking the private education, they have basically moved to government schools education, because of the they have their parents have lost the job, and there's some kind of these kind of problems. I think government has to make more focus, so that the money will come in the hands of every citizen of India. Secondly, I would suggest the government have to make more focus on the production linked incentives, because the production linked incentive scheme they have notified, but I think still there is a lot of work are required. They have not fully implemented. So government make them very simplified, and then they have to implement fully, and they have to, I think, monitoring policy and monitoring committee, I think there should be, so that timely every timely they can pass the incentive to the different sectors of industry. Secondly, I think the government make more focus on digitalization, because the digitalization is the priority of at a global level, because digitalization is basically it's a transformation, and the government make more spending on these digitalization, so that the education can be digitalized, so that health product can be digitalized, so everything should be digitalized. I think the government make more focus on that. So we are expecting these kind of areas where the government have to make more reform so that every class of society can be take the benefit of this.
Thank you, Rajeev ji. And now we have a great discussion. Now we have to conclude this program. Before conclude, I would like to take your quick take on this program. First of all, I go to Nikhil Dujari ji. Dujari ji, could you say something about this upcoming budget? Quick take here.
So a few things here. Of course, we are all expecting as personal tax there should be certain reliefs. there is currently an anomaly in the deductions in respect of provident fund. If you are a private employee versus if you're a government employee, I think that anomaly needs to go away. There should be increases in the base tax limit, the PPF amount, the surcharges when they were introduced on incomes of 50 lakhs and above and 1 crore and above was about 7 years ago. Now, in 7 years, price indices have significantly changed, and therefore that should be subjected to certain indexation benefits. So that needs to go up. There have been a huge increase in the cost of medical insurance. So I think somewhere some relief needs to come in terms of GST on mediclaim insurance, because that is not capable of being used as a credit by the respective insureds. Then, as I said in my earlier this thing on steel, the dumping duties, etc., that were levied need to go off. There needs to be some relief on the customs duty on import of steel. So, because domestic industry is really on the profit move, then there would be a lot of focus on agriculture and food processing sectors, considering the elections are upcoming. So there would be some giveaways for the states that are coming for the elections. So I wouldn't want to comment on that at this stage. But really, there needs to be a bigger push on the infra, which also means the laying down of electrical lines or transmission and distribution business, which is heavily capital intensive. That should get some boost, is what we're expecting. The other part that I find it very hard to believe is that today, if you take a DTC bus, then there is no GST. But if you take a metro ticket, there is a GST. So I think GST needs to be exempted on all modes of public transport. At least that is the bare minimum ask that we as citizens should have. I'm not asking for a GST waiver on Uber and Ola, because that may not be applying to the bulk of the population. And of course, we talked of various alternatives that are possible to boost the infra sector. I would believe that there will also be certain steps that the government needs to take in respect of corporates that have operations abroad and that they are shifting into India. I would believe that for manufacturing sector, shifting of operations from abroad into India should also get some incentives.
Thank you, Nikhil ji. And Sandeep ji, what is your quick take on upcoming budget?
Boss, I think Nikhil ji has covered a lot of things, but yes, definitely I would like to add that as the collection of the tax, whether it is direct tax or indirect tax, has been increased tremendously for the government. So I feel that government should share something with the taxpayers also by increasing the limits under Section 80C, you can say, or 80C, CQ, NPS, etc., so that there should be more money available for the consumers, more money available will be there in hands of the person, so that they can spend more in the market. If consumption will go up in the market, definitely the whole industry will grow, because at the end of the day, everything depends on the consumption. Then one more thing is this, now we have to reduce the pollution, we have to work on that. So EV is a very important factor, and I hope that government would give good incentive in this EV sector also in this budget. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Agarwal sahab. Rajeev ji, what do you think about upcoming budgets? Give your quick take about it.
I would suggest the government at the individual levels, they should think again, because although the slab rates have been changed in the last 2 years budget, but I think again they have to think about that. Basically, the 80C, section 80C of the income tax, section 54 of the income tax, and section 80D and section 24, that is basically interest exemption on the housing loan. The government, I think, increase these limits, because the threshold limits are very less. The one under section 80C, it is 1,50,000. That should be increased. That should be in the double digit, I think. According to, I think, section 24, there is some limitation of 2 lakhs rupees. That should be increased. As well as the government, I think the petroleum products like diesel, petrol, lubricants, and everything, I think, should be covered under GST, so that the input tax benefit of the GST can be availed by the industry.
Thank you, Rajeev ji. If
Thank you,
anybody
sir.
have any suggestion, any kind of the point, or want to say something, so please say before conclude this program. Sandeep ji or Nikhil ji, do you have any kind of the suggestion to the government before budget?
I think we already covered.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
already covered.
Okay, thank you. We have a great discussion over
Thank
here,
you.
and
Thank you, Ariel ji.
I think our budget would be like as we have expect from the finance ministry, and after budget we will discuss about what we have gain or what we have left. So
We will not gain anything.
okay, but we okay. Let discuss about after the budget, and
Of course, sir.
thanks
Definitely.
and a lot of thanks all of you
Thank you,
to
sir. Thank you.
giving your valuable time to us, to our company. So thank you,
Thank
and
you, Nikhil ji. Thank you,
Thank you very
Sandeep
much.
ji. Lot of
Thank you,
thanks.
Rajeev ji. Thank you, Nikhil ji.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you all of you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Ariel
Ji.
ji. Thank
Okay,
you,
ji,
sir.
bye.
Thank you. Oh, bye.